From my window in the old Tepito apartment, the city hummed like a living thing. Vendors calling, neons stuttering, the scent of roasting chilies and frying tortillas tangled with exhaust. It was always loud, always bright, an orchestra of small violences that made you feel alive and small at once. My name is Emir. A year earlier, I'd fled Tepeaca. Family fights, old grudges, a life that had grown too heavy, and landed in Tepito because it felt familiar. Raw, stubborn, full of people who made do. An old friend promised me work. I thought the neighborhood would fold me in. Instead, something in the air kept prying at the edges of my sleep, like a question I didn't want to answer. At first, the odd things were little and easily explained. The apartment came with a large, elongated mirror I hadn't asked for. There were nights when I heard faint thumps coming from it, like someone knocking on the other side of glass. Small things would be slightly out of place. A cup shifted, a shoe turned the opposite way. I told myself it was the building settling, a neighbor's prank, my own tired imagination. I had spent most of my life being more afraid of the living than the dead. People with knives and bad tempers make sense. Ghosts are poetry. So I kept going about my days, running errands, fixing cars, earning just enough to pay rent and eat. The world outside kept shouting its same honest chaos. Then I met the man at the market. He was old, small, with eyes that seemed to hold long winters. His stall smelled of metal and dust and things that had lost their names. He looked at me like he already knew the shape of my life and spoke as if he were reading from it, gentle, certain. He warned me not to bother what should be left alone in Tepito, told me to cover the mirror, and if I saw or heard strange things, to ignore them and move out. It felt absurd. I asked whether he knew where I lived. He smiled and said nothing. Before I could ask more, he melted into the crowd, and a small boy stood where the old man had been, as if the elder had never existed. The first time the mirror bled, I blamed theft. The door to my apartment was ajar, my heart jagged against my ribs. Whoever had come in must have left empty-handed, I thought, until I found the dark red stain in front of the mirror. It wasn't a smear traced by a hurried shoe. It seemed to pulse, as if a slow, patient thing were seeping out from the glass itself. When my trembling hand touched the stain, it felt like a fist of cold. The blood spread, not along the floor, but up, as if the room were being unstitched and the edges were bleeding into one another. The reflection resolved into a figure, not quite human, a shadow that gradually took on grotesque contours. It wore a red shirt and overalls, its limbs longer than they should have been, face egg-shaped and wrong in ways that set my teeth on edge. It moved only in the mirror, but it watched me like a hunter watches a trail. Then, in that silent, paralyzing way nightmares do, the thing began to hurt my reflection. The reflected me screamed without sound, clutching at a chest that looked like it was being stabbed. I lost consciousness on the cold tile, and when I came to, I convinced myself it had been a nightmare, until I noticed the fresh blood on my shirt. After that night, the world rearranged itself. I covered the mirror with a sheet and prayed until the candle wax pooled like a votive grave. I started looking for the old man at his stall. The boy said no one older than him had ever been there. The stall had belonged to the boy and his mother, always. The encounter felt less like a conversation and more like a message. Someone, or something, knew. An old woman with red lipstick and braided hair took pity on me when she heard what I'd seen. She told me the story of the witch of Tepito, a woman who'd fallen in love with a married man and in a rage of sorcery attempted to dry his wife away until death. The witch's spell misfired. An entity was summoned into that very mirror, and the witch herself was taken, eaten in the dark. The woman said the man I'd seen at the market was the father of the witch's would-be victim. He had come to bless both houses and to warn anyone who might occupy them. He had tried to keep whatever lived in the glass from harming his daughter. Then he had stayed behind to guard the place. When I understood the old woman's meaning, it hit me like cold water. I was living in the witch's old house. I decided to leave. That night, in a panic, I grabbed what I could and headed to my friend's place. For a moment there was reprieve. Light on, candles burning at the altar, the small, steady hum of someone else's breathing. But even then, the world wasn't safe. A heavy touch on my shoulder in the dark revealed the thing with the egg-shaped face standing inches from me, mouth opening into a room full of hunger. I screamed. My friend came running, and the thing vanished like a smear of ink. He didn't ridicule me. He left the light on and sat with me through the long, merciless hours until dawn. I went back to the apartment the next day to collect the rest. The mirror had been smashed, and the floor was a field of dried, dark shapes, as if a storm had passed through and torn the room open. I remember shouting into the empty place, telling whatever had come out of that glass that I owed it nothing, that the witch had died and couldn't hurt anyone else. I wrapped the few things I had into a suitcase and left Tepito by bus before the sun had properly risen. I spent a while back in Puebla with my parents, letting the hum of an ordinary household stitch up the rawness inside me. Time has a way of smoothing edges, but not erasing them. I found a steadier job, I moved cities, and I sleep with rosaries and small prayers folded into my pockets like talismans. I tell myself the Virgin of Guadalupe watched over me that night. Sometimes religious comfort is the only furniture heavy enough to support your fear. Yet I dream of the man in the mirror, his long limbs draping through alleys, his face a sore in the corner of vision. My friend still calls from Tepito sometimes, with a voice that's too tight. He tells me there are nights he feels watched, that someone or something sits in the house where I used to live, peering out of the dark. Guilt sits with me often now. Did I free something that had been trapped for a reason? Did I choose my own safety at the cost of others? These questions prick like thorns, and there are nights I wonder if the thing will ever find me where I hide. Sometimes in a market crowd, I think I see that old man watching from a stall, or the little boy who takes his place. I want to thank him. I want to curse him. Mostly, I want to believe that a blessing can still hold, and that the Virgin's light can cover what the mirror could not. So I live with the memory, the smell of chilies and gasoline, the scrape of the mirror when someone knocks from the other side, the terrible understanding that some doors should remain shut. I carry the rosary. I say a prayer for the witch's devotion that went so wrong, and I keep moving forward. Not because I think the thing is gone, but because life asks it of me. If the shadow ever comes searching, if one night some reflection begins to bleed in the corner of a stranger's room, I will not pretend I didn't see it. I will say the names I know, hold the cross to my chest, and pray that whatever hunger there is will be satisfied by my own offering. The memory of a frightened boy who chose to run, and in running, let loose a thing he could never control. And if that memory ever reaches you, do not forget
to cover the mirrors.